Great evening, Miss Lakeisha Baker. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. For all of you who are watching us live, you know what to do. Please show Lakeisha some love. Let her know that you are here. And if you would like to just share your location. For those of you who do not know me, I am Lena Lassiter. I'm the founder and president of Forever Healed. Well, who are we? We are a nonprofit, and we help those who are suffering from a broken heart due to a loss of any kind. We want them to restore, we want them to reclaim, and we want them to recover. So I have my master's in human services counseling with a specialization in crisis and trauma. I'm an advanced grief recovery method specialist and also a director in corporate America, author. And we also have a partnership with the Richmond City Sheriff's Office. So we go in there and we train their staff and their residents on grief and empathy. We also go into corporate America and we talk about grief and empathy and in the workplace. We are also an advocate for homicide survivors. So we also have a partnership with our Richmond City Police Department. So tonight we are excited to have Lakeisha Baker with us. I'm telling you, you guys are in for a treat. I have been excited all week. I have heard her speak in the past. I'm telling you, she's a great orator. She knows her stuff. She's well educated in trauma. But more importantly, I love her message with regard to intentional healing, because that's where we want you to be, in a healed state. So we're going to talk about that tonight. So hello, Rosalind. Thank you so much for joining us. Hi, Tanya. Thank you again for joining us. I really appreciate you joining in. So let everybody know that we have Lakeisha here tonight. So share this on your pages. So who is Lakeisha? Who is Lakeisha Baker? So she has worked in human services for over 2 decades, y'all. She has a Bachelor of Science in Human Services Management from the University of Phoenix. She has a Master of Social Work from the University of Southern California. She also has a Master of Divinity and a Master of Arts in Christian Education from Samuel DeWitt Proctor School of Theology at Virginia Union University. She matriculates through the doctoral and social work program at Capella University. She is a U.S. Army veteran. Come on, y'all, listen at this. With an extensive background working with active duty servicemen, veterans, and military families. She's a licensed and ordained minister. She's a licensed clinical social worker in the state of Virginia. And she's also the founder and the owner of Purposed Healing LLC in Central Virginia, where she provides clinical counseling, education, and empowerment services for individuals, couples, and families dealing with distress, anger, trauma, and relationship healing and building. She's a certified eye movement. Say that for me, Lakeisha.
Eye movement desensitization reprocessing.
And reprocessing. EMDR therapist. There you go. EMDR therapist. So the one thing, guys, that really caught my attention was intentional healing. Intentional healing. I love that. I was like, wow, this is what she believes, right? She believes that healing is intentional. It's a challenging journey, and she feels like it's well worth the travel when connected with the proper support. So tonight, Lakeisha, we're going to talk about this. So I just want to remind everybody that when we think about grief, right, which is our natural response to a loss, right? Grief is when our normalcy has changed. It's been disrupted, right? But when we typically think about grief, we equate it to a death. However, traumatic events can trigger the emotions of grief. Grief can arise when our everyday routine changes profoundly. Trauma An emotional response, right, with a strong link to grief response occurs when someone experiences a sudden, unpredictable, distressing event, a natural disaster, a physical altercation like a tragic death, sexual assault, or long-term abuse can trigger the emotions of grief. So some of these events, if left untreated, can take a toll on our mental health. So it is important that we are intentional about our healing. Because I have spoken with some people who have said that, well, I don't have a testimony, Lena, because I haven't gone through a traumatic event. And I said, well, that's your testimony that you've been kept, that you didn't have a traumatic event, right? It's almost like, Lakeisha, we wear this badge of honor of being strong, of hiding behind a mask without necessarily healing from our traumatic events. So I just want to talk about that with you tonight. So what does intentional healing look like?
Well, first of all, I just want to say thank you. It's an honor to be here this evening. Yes, healing. Healing is definitely intentional. And intentional healing basically looks like just taking the steps. It doesn't look like you have all the answers of what lies ahead in place. There's no specific roadmap on if you do A, B, and C, you'll experience healing in this way. You know, you may have to go from A to Z back to F and you know, down back to X and back to B, you know, in order to experience your healing. It looks different for every individual, but part of healing being intentional is just deciding that, you know what, I'm not going to stay stuck in a state that is unhealed or broken or fractured. I'm going to choose to do what I need to do to gain my healing.
That's good. That's good. A choice, right? We have to make the decision, because if we were to fracture our leg, we wouldn't think twice about going to, right, the hospital to get it set, right? Going to physical therapy to be able to use our legs again, or our limb, whatever was fractured. But when it comes to mental health, we don't use the same urgency with that, right? Because a lot of us have heard what goes on in this house stays in this house, right? But that's not necessarily true, because what goes on in that house that we suppress and we don't heal, some of us are going to feel it in our actions, you know, in our words. So I love how you said it's a choice. So we have to make that conscious choice to go and get the help we need mentally.
Absolutely. And I like that you pointed out what goes on in this house stays in this house, because that has been a mindset that has carried us for generations and is doing so much harm, because what goes on in this house does not stay in this house, because it walks out the door every time we walk out the door. We carry whatever we experience with us everywhere we go, into every relationship that we have, whether it is a romantic relationship, a familial relationship, a work relationship, a friendship, a church relationship. Everything that we've been through is going to manifest in our behaviors. So if we choose to stay in an unhealed state, it's going to show. It's going to show in various different ways. And a lot of times, when we think about mental health, the words mental health scare us. And it's because we don't understand mental health. So we have to actually kind of go back and break down what mental health is, right? Mental health is something that we all have. Everybody has mental health. There are moments where we may have we may be well in our mental health, and then there are moments where we're not doing so well. And then there are mental health disorders. But most people, when they think, oh, if I'm going to therapy or if there's something going on with my mental health, then I must have a mental health disorder. I must be I'm going to be diagnosed with something. And so the
Yeah.
fear is having that stigma of a diagnosis attached to them. And even if there is a diagnosis, it's not a death sentence. It does not mean that your life can't continue to be filled with joy and love and peace, because it can be. It's just learning how to actually find ways and find the connections to be able to deal with those mental health disorders or deal with those mental health challenges. Because again, we all experience mental health. We all experience mental health challenges. You know, you mentioned earlier how, trauma, some people don't want to talk about trauma because it's like, a badge of honor, but everybody has experienced trauma. Just having lived through the pandemic, which hasn't completely ended, right? We have experienced trauma in different forms. We experience trauma when we turn on the television and we see Black and brown people being killed by the police, when we turn on the television and we see senseless crime, senseless shootings happening, innocent children being killed by gun. We're experiencing trauma in various different forms. And oftentimes we don't even realize that we've been traumatized.
Wow. Yeah, and Vanessa said that African Americans don't want to be judged seeking counseling.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like if we say something to someone, hey, I don't want to go to counseling because I don't want people judging me, or we go to counseling and we're secretive about it. I've encouraged clients, talk to your family members, tell them that you're going to counseling, tell them how it's helping you, because the judgment comes from a lack of understanding. Because we think that if a person is going to counseling, something is wrong with them. But you don't have to have something wrong to go with counseling. Sometimes we go to counseling because I want to be a better person, or I want to be better in my relationship, or I want to deal with some of the experiences that I had in childhood, or I don't know why, but I go from 0 to 100 with anger and I can't seem to stop it. There's a root to it. Let's figure what that root is so we can pluck it.
I like that. And that's one thing that I have said to individuals too. Like, you have to get to the root of what's causing you to act however you're acting, to feel whatever you feel. There's always a root cause, to it. And it's okay to go and figure out what that is, so that you can have coping skills, like positive coping skills, right, to help you through. It's okay. So Purpose Healing LLC, how was that birthed?
Whew, wow. So when we think about Purpose Healing LLC, it goes back to 2008. Wow. I was at Fayetteville, North Carolina, and I was making my journey. I was, working in the human services field, and I was considering going into getting a degree in counseling or a degree in social work. And I said, I want to be able to help people because I went through my own challenges in life. I had some childhood trauma experiences, and then experienced some difficult experiences in marriage. And I really, really wanted to be able to figure out a way how to help myself. So started with wanting to figure out, how do I get me help? Because nobody ever talked to me about going to therapy and things of that nature. And, so Purpose Healing was birthed in that moment. And initially it was birthed about being my ministry and just ministering to couples and individuals as a minister. And then it continued to evolve. And in the evolution of it, Purpose Healing LLC became a therapeutic option for individuals. So I provide clinical counseling, clinical therapy to couples, individuals, and even families.
That's good. Well, that was my next question. You already helped me with that. I was going to ask you about the services that you offer. A lot of individuals who reach out to us, they ask us about virtual versus in person. So are you offering in-person services at this time? Are they all virtual?
Currently, I am only offering in-person services. We'll see what the future holds. I'm sorry. Scratch that. I guess the in-person must be coming a little sooner than what I thought, huh? currently I'm only offering virtual services. The in-person services may be something that's coming down the pike in a few months, couple of years. We'll see what the Lord says. But virtual are the options that I'm providing. And the virtual options are pretty much for a lot of people who don't understand virtual, they're like, well, how can I do therapy virtual? It's like being on FaceTime or being on Zoom, which we've become very familiar with over the course of the pandemic in most cases. And you're able to sit face to face with your therapist. Of course, we want you to be on camera because we learn your demeanor, we learn your body language. We're able to develop rapport with you to be able to determine if there are certain things. Now, there are some clients who are actively suicidal that virtual is not my recommended option to utilize for those individuals. So I would refer them to someone who could provide in person. But virtual is very good for the busy family member, the busy individual. I've had moms or and dads who have had to take their children to practices, and the only time they have is that hour that their child is in practice. So I know their location for safety purposes, but they're able to log on and we're able to conduct the session while their child is conducting practice, or they could be fixing dinner while we're having our session. It just allows for versatility for individuals to be able to access therapy, but not have to figure out, how do I drive to the therapist's office, drive back, spend that while having spent an hour in therapy plus the 30 minutes of travel. That's 2 hours that they don't have available, but they can free up 1 hour to do virtual. So virtual works for some, and it's not the preference for all, and that's okay. But for those that have found it to be a good option, it has been very lucrative in helping them work through their mental health issues and challenges that they're experiencing.
Yes. I have a question for you. So many things are popping in my head as you were speaking, just about the services that you offer and just a wide range of services and who you serve, or the population that you serve. Sometimes, Lakeisha, I have like parents will come to me, right? So their children may have gone through a traumatic, event. And then the children don't necessarily want to talk about it. So the parents are always asking, so how do I do this? Like, do I force them into therapy? Like, how do I get them to open up and to have these conversations? So what advice would you give parents who have had, maybe they have also gone through traumatic, events, but they have had children who have gone through a traumatic event. The children are kind of withdrawn, not necessarily wanting to talk about it. Like, what advice would you give those parents in terms of broaching the conversation around mental health? Some of them feel like when they do like schedule, appointments, it feels like it's forced. So how do they get their children to buy in, right, to counseling services so that they can start their journey of healing?
So we definitely don't want to force children because if we force them, we can cause them to shut down even further. So my recommendation would be for parents to actually actively engage in mental health support on their own for themselves. And in that process, that therapist can help give them tips and tools or connect them with resources that can help them help their children. So it may even be just over dinner or the ride to school or the ride to practice or the ride to somewhere else, just having a conversation. Hey, I saw such and such, or even suggestions for movies or books to offer them to be able to watch that may help start the conversation and allow them to know it's okay. Sometimes children just aren't ready. Some of it is because they think that their parents just won't understand. Fresh Prince said it best. Parents just don't understand, right?
Yeah.
But also some of it too could be the fact that children don't always know what they feel, right? So maybe even providing parents a feelings wheel to help their children see that there's more feelings than just the 4 or 5 feelings that most of us know, so that they can kind of get an understanding that, oh, this is a feeling that I'm experiencing. And they can begin to talk about those things. And, you can create different activities where just affirming them. I also encourage parents, especially those parents that are parents of faith, to pray over your children and cover them, and also pray that there are people in their lives that they do feel comfortable talking to, and give them the space to talk to those people. It may be youth leaders in the church. It could be, counselors at the school or teachers at the school, or older teens or older young adults that they feel more comfortable talking with. Give them the space to be able to talk with them and not feel like you have to receive a report on what they're talking about unless it is something that as a parent you should be notified of.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you for that.
Absolutely.
So parents who are watching, again, just don't force. And you can actually get tools yourself, is what I heard, to help your children, through this process.
Mhm.
So thank you for answering that question for me. Also, Suicide Awareness Month. Let's talk about it, because
Mhm.
we're still hearing one too many, Lakeisha, individuals who are taking their lives. Now, I tell you, outside of Forever Heal, I work for a long-term care carrier, right? And we're seeing even the elderly population are committing suicide, right? I
Mhm.
mean, and I don't know if the rate has increased over the past couple of years. I don't know what it is, but we're seeing it rise even amongst the elder, population. So let's just talk about suicide, what it is, what it's not, the stigma around that. If there are truly signs, like, people say there are signs, is that true? Let's talk about it. Let's talk about the facts versus, again, the things that we hear that may not necessarily be true.
Absolutely. So are there signs for suicide? Let's start there. Sometimes there are, right? Sometimes individuals will make comments or they will give away some of their prized possessions, which can be indicators. But then also there are times where individuals have made a decision and they do not want anyone to try to change their mind. And so they will not indicate in any way that they are thinking that of death by suicide. So it does come at a surprise, especially when they haven't said anything or done anything that has indicated suicidal ideation or anything of that nature. And so it is important to understand that with suicide, it is a decision that is permanent, and it's a permanent decision to a problem that is often temporary. But for that individual, that problem is so great that they feel that that is the best decision for themselves, especially when we think about the elderly population, but that applies to any population.
Yeah.
And the hard part is that with suicide, everyone left behind is left with so many questions that only the person who died by suicide can answer.
That's
And
so true.
so it's such a difficult subject because there's no one way of being able to say this is what suicidality looks like, because it's different for every individual. I have also experienced loss by way of suicide within my family, and it's hard, and within close friend groups, and it is definitely difficult, and there are more questions afterwards than there were before. And unfortunately, like I said, the person who died by suicide is the gateholder of those questions. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, we cannot ask those questions. Um, so it is just encouraging to understand that everybody is going through something and that we have to be kind and compassionate to everyone, because you never know. And we also have to take into consideration, too, when individuals are struggling with suicide, they may have reached out and maybe what they were going through could have been seen as, oh, that's no big deal, or you need to just get over it, right? Those
Mhm.
statements, of those insensitive statements that are often made. And we never want to tell somebody that what they're going through, what they're experiencing is no big deal, simply
Right.
because it may not be big to you, but it could be huge to them. Everyone is different on how things impact them, and we never want to tell people to just get over it, because again, everybody's impacted differently, so we want to give people space to be able to feel what they need, but we also want to encourage them not to stay there, not to stay in that moment of despair. We want them to come out of that despair and tap into the resources that are available to them.
No, that's good. And I like how you said that, like this is not a picture of it. Because I remember, I don't know, maybe a year or so ago, but someone had did this social media post. And I know they probably meant well, Lakeisha, but it said something like, this is what the face of suicide looks like. And I kind of cringed because I was like, there is no face.
Absolutely.
You know, like there really is no face. And it had been shared, I don't know, like multiple times. And I was like, there is absolutely no face, behind suicide. It is unique and individual, and also to your point, like all the questions, right, that the family will have afterwards. And sometimes family members will say, even to us, like, well, they didn't think about us when they
Mm-hmm.
did this. And sometimes I say, well, we don't know, because sometimes they thought that they were helping the family out, by doing that, because sometimes they feel like, Lakeisha, like they're a burden. If I just go ahead and take my life, right, and then my family won't have to keep going through like whatever. But
Mm-hmm.
again, it's a lot of unanswered questions that we just don't know because the person is no longer here.
Mm-hmm.
So I see. I have found the accessibility to mental health services can be limited, even with insurance. This can be a frustrating point for someone and lead them to suffer through mental health challenges. Adelia?
Absolutely. I think that that is a very good point, because everyone doesn't have insurance, and even if they have insurance, their insurance may not cover, mental health therapy, or they may not be able to afford the copayment, right? And not everyone can afford to pay out of pocket because it's not inexpensive. It can be very expensive. However, there are free options. You have some mental health therapists who will take pro bono clients. You also have community organizations, community services boards that you can reach out to look for lower options. EAP through your workplace, the Employee Assistance Program. Most organizations have an EAP program, so you can tap into the EAP to know, what services are available. And I even think about, when we talk about individuals that are coming out of incarceration, right? They may not have insurance, and they may need mental health services that maybe they were receiving while incarcerated, but now that they're no longer incarcerated, they're not able to tap into those resources. So we want to make sure that we're offering those resources. And there are nonprofit organizations, there are for-profit organizations. Like I myself actually do take pro bono clients. I try to take in a couple a year, 2 or 3 a year, and taking pro bono clients. And it all just depends on the length of time that I need to provide support to those individuals, because I do recognize that everybody is not in a situation. And ethically, as a clinical social worker, that is a part of our ethics, to be able to provide support. And I'm sure that the professional counselors and psychologists also have that in their ethics as well, to provide support. So it's just a matter of reaching out. One way to start is Give an Hour. Reach out to the Give an Hour organization. You can locate them on giveanour.org because of the fact that it can. And there's a very good question that just came up.
Let's see. So Tanya's asking, why don't medical insurance help with therapy?
And so it's not that medical insurance does not help with therapy. Sometimes it is the selection that an individual chooses for medical insurance, or there may be some limitations. Like even Medicaid and Medicare offers therapy, allows individuals to provide therapy. It is a process for clinicians to get credentialed with mental health therapy. So that sometimes makes it harder because of becoming credentialed. But once an individual is credentialed with the insurance panels, they're able to provide therapy. And, so insurance does allow for mental health therapy. It's just a matter of tapping into your insurance and finding out what those options are. And also when, if you notice that, hey, my insurance does not allow me to go utilize mental health therapy, call your insurance company, find out, can you change that? When can you change that, right? We're getting ready to go into October, November timeframe is usually open season for insurance changes. So this is a good time to have this conversation so that you can reach out to your insurance companies and find out what options are available, so that those individuals who would like to go to therapy and maybe are not aware that they are eligible through their insurance, they can be, or maybe their insurance does not have eligibility as yet, but they can get it.
Very good questions, you guys. Keep them coming if you have questions.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Lakeisha. Yeah, a great point too, right? For those who have been incarcerated, And we help them while they're there. But you're absolutely right, and they do have services too, right? They have services for a licensed professional while they are there as part, of their healing process. But you're absolutely right. When they get out, I mean, how do they get the treatment that they need? How do they continue on? Yeah. So a very good point there. But yeah, there are a lot of resources, nonprofits, for profits. And one thing that we do too, Lakeisha, I love to hear the pro bono and how you give back, to the community. Is that so what we do too is a couple of times a year is like we'll do like free support classes, just support groups, and don't charge, for that. Now, let me be very clear. That's not therapy. So we just do support groups to help individuals to be able to kind of speak, put a name right to what they're going through in their grief, and to kind of be around other people who have had similar losses. But that's not therapy. It's support groups. I want to be very clear when I say that as well. So maybe a good support group will help some of you be able to just express what you're feeling. But I am an advocate of therapy. Just like we get our cars tuned up yearly, you take your cars in. Even if you feel like everything is okay, it's good to go in and sit on somebody's couch and have a conversation just to make sure that you are good. And that's one thing that our co-pastor, I give her a lot of credit. She always talked to us about that. Go and talk to somebody, sit on somebody's couch. It's okay. And you can do that regularly. You can do that, once a year. I mean, it's fine. And talk about how it's helping you.
Absolutely. So there is one thing that I do, I want to point out when it comes to therapy. A lot of times the misconception of therapy is that if I go to therapy, it's going to be somebody telling me what to do and how to do it, or they're going to be telling me that I was wrong for how I did it. That's not what therapy is about. Therapy is basically like traveling, right? When you travel, and this is what I explain to the clients that I see. When they come to therapy, I serve as the GPS. They set their goals. Their goals is the destination that they want to go to. And in that, as the GPS, I'm going to guide them toward those goals, right? And in the guiding them toward those goals, I may say, in 1 mile, let's turn left. We're going to try this. We're going to work on this. However, it is their therapy session. So if they don't want to turn left in 1 mile, we're not going to turn left, because maybe life has been lifing for the day. So we need to deal with what today brought, not what we talked about last week, and bringing that back to the table, or whatever the homework assignment may have been. So we're going to deal with today. They have a right to do that because they have a right to self-determination. Also, with that, if they're avoiding the left turn, or the direction and being guided to work on some things, I'm going to explain to them, hey, these are the goals that we set. I just want to check in to make sure that these are still your goals. And it's usually the answer is going to be, oh yeah, that's still my goals, but life has been lifing, right? Maybe they have experienced a loss of a job. Maybe they've experienced the loss of a loved one. So the goals that they set out initially may not be their primary focus at present. It's still goals that they want to reach. It's just not their primary goals. So we need to change directions at this point so we can focus on what they need in this moment. And we'll go back to what they originally wanted to deal with once they're at a place to where we can do that. But then there are times too where they're like, you know what? Nope, I've realized that, I don't need to work on those things. Those aren't the goals that I have. I've learned that I've got some other goals I want to work on. Okay, so now we're going to look at redefining what the goals are and creating a plan from there.
I like that. The GPS. So they set their goals, and you're just kind of helping them guide them towards, reaching their goals, attaining their goals. I like that. Let's see. Can it be that people are scared to go to therapy because they believe the therapist is going to prescribe them medication or label them?
Good question. So one thing is, I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I do not prescribe medication at all, right? Medication is actually not my go-to preference. If an individual is going to be prescribed medication, they're going to have to go to a medical doctor or a psychiatrist or a nurse practitioner that is a prescriber. I am not a medication prescriber, nor will I ever be. So But in terms of labeling, I don't label anybody. I don't judge anybody. I learned this from one of my previous professors, which I'm going to give a shout out to her, Dr. Lakeisha Lockhart. But when I invite individuals into therapy, I tell them that therapy is not a safe space. It is a brave space. And the reason that I say that it's not a safe space is because sometimes we're going to deal with things that aren't going to feel safe. If you've experienced sexual abuse, if you've experienced any form of abuse or any form of trauma, that we're talking about it and dealing with it makes you feel unsafe. It's not going to feel like a safe space, but it is a brave space where you are not by yourself to deal with those things. Now, am I there to label you because of what you've been through, what you've done, what you've chosen to do? Absolutely not. It is a judgment-free zone. I'm not there to judge you because my personal feelings and my personal biases have no place in the therapeutic relationship and in your therapeutic experience. Now, will there be a need to provide a diagnosis if you are insured? Yes. However, I am very slow when it comes to the diagnosis, and that's intentional. The diagnosis that most people will receive is adjustment disorder, unspecified, which in layman's terms means life happened, right? And then you have adjustment disorder with anxiety. So life happened and that person is experiencing some anxiety as a result. Or you have adjustment disorder with depression. Life happened and that person has been experiencing some depression as a result. Or you have what is called adjustment disorder mixed, which is life happened with some depression and some anxiety, right? Life happens to everybody at some point or another. You may have more money than you have bills. That's going to cause some stress. Life is happening, right? You may witness a very bad car accident that happened 3 cars ahead of you, but you saw it. That's life happening, right? Those are experiences that can be traumatic. They can be stressful for you and may require you to need to go to therapy to just kind of process through and work through those things. However, diagnosis like bipolar disorder, anything like major depressive disorder, schizophrenia, those diagnoses are not going to happen in the first session, the second session, and they certainly shouldn't happen in the first, I would say 4 or 5 sessions. It takes some time because individuals have to actually demonstrate meeting the criteria for those diagnoses. And we also need to make sure we rule out trauma first, because trauma, the response to trauma can look like bipolar disorder and it can look like schizophrenia. And in fact, Black women or women of color, Black and brown women are often misdiagnosed with bipolar disorder because of the fact that trauma is not ruled out first. Because what is a trauma response can look like bipolar disorder. For Black males or males of color, what is a trauma response can look like schizophrenia as well. So it's very important for clinicians, as clinicians, that we are ensuring that we're ruling out trauma. We should always be assessing for trauma. And again, it just goes back to what I said earlier. Oftentimes people have experienced trauma and don't even realize that they've experienced trauma, because most people are thinking that trauma is being sexually assaulted or experiencing domestic violence or going to war or things of that nature. But trauma could be just witnessing a car accident. And it doesn't even have to be a major car accident where a vehicle is flipped or someone who has passed away or seriously injured. It could simply be a fender bender. Just the fear associated can be trauma provoking.
That's good. That's good. That's good. And I love the brave space, because we say safe place a lot, but in reality, it is a brave space. It's a space for you to be willing to share what you have gone through, right? It's a space for you to be brave, and even talking to your therapist about what you're dealing with, and them helping you through those goals. I love that. Patricia said she had to learn therapy is okay. I felt I didn't want anyone in my business, but we really needed to help us through life-changing events and challenges. Amen.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm so glad that you pointed that out, because someone needed to know that therapy is okay, right? It's easy for me as a therapist to say, oh, you should go to therapy, right? But even as a therapist, I go to therapy. I go to therapy because I've had my own experiences of trauma. I go to therapy because I am a combat veteran. So I've had experiences in combat that required me to need therapy, but I also go to therapy because I help other people deal with what life brings them. And I need
Yeah,
to make sure that I stay centered so that I don't take on what is called secondary or vicarious trauma. So it's
yeah, that's
important to make sure that we're seeking therapy. But I get it. I get it, Patricia. You don't want anybody in your, I don't want anybody in my business either, right? However, the one great thing about seeing a therapist is they're all in your business, right? We're gonna get all in your Kool-Aid when we're talking with you, but it's confidential. Your business is not going to be in the streets. Whereas you may have a conversation with your homegirl or your homeboy, and next thing you know, that conversation is no longer private between the two of you. Things have been shared. So it
yeah,
is definitely important to know that when you go to therapy, confidentiality is key. There is this thing called HIPAA. We will not violate HIPAA because I work too hard to be able to obtain this license. And woo, putting out clients' information can cause me to lose that license, and we're not about to do that.
that's right. Thank you, Vanessa, again for being brave and sharing. Yeah, she said it's helped me out in a major way and to see things in a different perspective. Absolutely.
Absolutely. And that's good because sometimes, we need to see things from. So this is the thing, right? Oftentimes we have friends, but sometimes we have friends that will tell us, "Oh yeah, that's a good idea," when it's really not a good idea. "Oh yeah, go. Oh, that's okay that you're doing that," when it's really not okay that you're doing that. The therapist can be there to help challenge some of the things that you're thinking, right? Because sometimes some of us can have negative cognitions. The way we think is negative. Whether we're thinking negatively about ourselves, we're thinking negatively about the community, we're thinking negatively about our workplace or other things, so that therapists can help us see things from a different perspective, as Vanessa pointed out. So very good point.
Yeah. Um, and it's okay. I mean, I tell you guys, I am a huge advocate for it. And listen, those of you who are joining us tonight and watching the replay, and it's okay to do your due diligence, right? Your homework and finding a therapist that's for you. What I don't want you to do is to say, well, this session didn't go well, our personalities just didn't match. Find someone else. Like, it's okay. Do not stop the process. I know when I first went to therapy, it took a couple of different therapists, right? Until I finally found the one who was for me. I know now to just do my my research and to see what I need, right? What they offer, even ahead of time. But it's okay. But what I don't want you to do is like I did initially, and what I did, Lakeisha, I was like, nope, this is not for me. They didn't hear me, So that was just my excuse not to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
But then I realized, okay, no, I need to go and have a conversation and talk to somebody. And I found someone who was a great personality fit for me, right? Who held me accountable, too, as well, right? To maintaining my goals, reaching my goals and maintaining my goals. So there is someone out there for you, is what I want you guys to understand. So if you had a bad experience, initially, try someone else. Like,
Mm-hmm.
don't give up on it because there is someone for you. It does help. It does help. So please go and let's not be embarrassed about talking about it. So I really appreciate those of you who said, yes, I went and it helped me. It gave me a different perspective. Thank you, Vanessa, right? And we talk about that business part again, because what we said early on, because we were taught at an early age, what goes on in this house stays in this house. So then our perception is they're going to be all up in my business.
Mm-hmm.
They are there to help us, y'all.
Yeah. And so this is the thing. Well, finding a therapist, I like to run. Not very good at it, but I like to run. And finding a therapist is like finding a good running shoe, right? Everybody can't run in Nike. Everybody can't run in Asics. Some of us need Hoka. Some of us need Brooks. You have to find the right shoe that works for you. Same thing with the therapist, finding the right therapist that works for you. So that means reading that therapist bio, asking for a consultation, if you spent 2 or 3 sessions and you feel like it's not a good fit, don't feel like you're going to hurt their feelings, because what's important is that you are getting the support that you need. I promise you, it does not hurt our feelings as a therapist if you feel like you're not a good fit, because we don't want to do a disservice for you. We want to make sure you are connected with who is going to help you be the best version of yourself. And in order for that to happen, you've got to be honest first with you to say, hey, this isn't a good fit, right? You should be comfortable and you should be able to be friendly with your therapist, but they're not your friend. So they're not going to always say things that's going to make you feel good. Sometimes they may challenge things that you're thinking. They still should be respectful. So they shouldn't be talking to you disrespectfully or any form. You shouldn't feel less than in how they're talking to you or what they're saying. There's a therapeutic rapport that has to be built, right? And so it's definitely important to find that. So looking on Psychology Today, for different therapists in your area and looking at all of their profiles. Can it be time consuming? Absolutely. Right. But it's important to take that time so you can have a pool of therapists to pull from and see who best fits your style of therapy or your style of personality that you're looking for. But also Googling therapists near me. Right. You have therapy for Black girls. We have many more Black men that are coming forth as therapists. And it's amazing because, as good as a therapist as I think I might be, right? I'm not a Black male. So I can only relate to the experiences of a Black male to a certain degree, but another Black male can relate far, in a far greater manner than what I can. So being able to connect them with other Black males doesn't mean that a female therapist can't be good for a male, because they can be, right? Just like a male therapist can be good for a female. So it definitely is important to do your research and take the time to just kind of vet that therapist to see if they work. And if they don't, if it's not a good fit, just say, hey, it's not a good fit. I think that, can you please provide me with referrals? If someone tells me they're not a good fit, or if I terminate therapy for whatever reason, I'm going to provide a minimum of 3 referrals to other therapists that align with what they are looking for.
That's good. Lakeisha had to help me earlier because she's an EMDR therapist. So eye movement, desensitization, and reprocessing therapist. What does that mean?
I knew you were going to ask that question somehow, but so EMDR for sure is a therapy that is predominantly for trauma, but it can help with all kinds of things. With EMDR, the eye movement is utilizing light stream or, movement to be able to that rapid eye movement is to kind of help desensitize the traumatic experience that a person has in their brain. It's going to kind of lessen it and allow your brain, the neuroplasticity in your brain, to help your brain heal. So it's a really, really good option. So anybody who has experienced significant trauma, if you are looking to work through that trauma, finding someone who specializes in EMDR is a great option. Also finding someone who is, cognitive behavioral therapy, trauma focused, trained, because CBT, trauma focus is a really good option. There are a lot of good options out there: brain spotting, CPT, DBT. There's a lot of different, and I'm using acronyms, I know. But I promise you, ask your therapist, what are those acronyms, right? I don't want to start shooting out all these names and everything. And y'all be like, what? But definitely, there's a lot of different options that are available that can help individuals heal. And EMDR is one that I absolutely love. Partly the reason that I love it is because when you become EMDR trained, you have to go through the EMDR process to know and understand what it feels like when you go through that process. And EMDR will take a lot out of you. It is emotionally exhausting to go through it. So I often encourage my clients not to have anything planned later in the day. I usually take them as my latter clients in the day so that they can rest. And just personally, when I did my EMDR portion as the client, going through, I remember afterwards finishing around 5 o'clock in the evening and sitting down on the chair, my chair in my living room, and waking up and it was 5 o'clock the next morning.
Wow.
So I didn't realize until after going through it how emotionally draining it can be.
Yeah.
And I didn't even deal with anything heavy. So just imagine a person that's dealing with something heavy. It is a great option, and it is definitely something to explore if you are looking to deal with any type of trauma that you've experienced.
Okay. Thank you.
Absolutely.
All right. So I know I held you over. I'm sorry, but we had some good questions and some comments for you. I want you to be able to get off here and enjoy your evening. But how can viewers contact you?
So viewers can contact me on my website, which is www.purposedhealingllc.com. You can also call it 804-496-1073. Keep in mind that I do have another full-time job outside of what I do with Purposed Healing. So definitely, if you reach out and I do not answer, please give me 24 to 48 hours to get back to you. I will get back to you. I do receive text to that message. If that is your better way, I will respond to those texts and or voicemails. If you do not leave a message, I will not call back. So please leave a message if you are calling. Definitely want you to reach out. You can also find me on Instagram and Facebook under Purposed Healing. That's purposed with a D on the end, Purposed Healing.
Okay. Thank you so much for coming on and just educating us tonight, just encouraging us and responding to the questions that we had from those who are watching live. So if you have found this to be beneficial, please share the information, share Lakeisha's information, as well. So guys, share so that this can help, somebody else who may be suffering in silence, or you may know someone, or maybe it's a loved one or family member, and you feel like this could help them. So please share. We really appreciate you joining tonight. We want you to be intentional about your healing. I love that so much, and know that it's okay to seek out the help that you may need. I want all of you to have sweet rest tonight. And I'm going to give the floor back to Lakeisha to just add anything that she wants to have the last word or encouraging word to all of you who are watching tonight. Thank you for your continued support.
Okay. First of all, Lena, thank you so much for the invitation. I always love the opportunity to be able to share any information that can help individuals be actively participating in their mental health wellness, because that is important that we are all well with their mental health. One of the things that I didn't point out is that I am also a mental health instructor for Mental Health of America. So anyone who is looking to conduct classes or for their organization, their church, I can provide training so that you can become mental health first aiders. Because the mental health first aid is like CPR, right? But it's for mental health. It's being able to recognize the signs and help to stabilize them until you can get them connected to the proper help. Mm-hmm. So that is definitely important. I provide that training for adults, and then I also provide it for youth. The providing for youth is for adults who work with youth, so that they can be able to identify when youth are experiencing mental health first aid challenges. So that is very important. I do appreciate the fact that I don't know if you saw the comment, but Patricia had made a comment about the cost of therapy. And I think that is so important that everyone understands that the cost is often what keeps individuals from going to therapy, but most of our health benefits do cover therapists. So it is important to check with your healthcare providers to see what the coverage is, what your copayment may be. And so you have your options, and then shop around for a therapist. The same way that we will pay money to wear name brand shoes, name brand clothes, we also need to be willing to invest in our mental health, because that is extremely important. Because if your mental health is not well, what good is it what you're wearing, right? So definitely take care of yourself. Know that healing is intentional. Be intentional about your healing. That is extremely important. I thank you for all of your time and support. Thank you so much again, Lena, for the invitation.
Absolutely. Thank you all. Peaceful, sweet rest tonight. Bye.